there everyone, I am Mr. Brass. Today I'm going to be tackling anti-theism, and this will be a part of a series of videos I do every now and then, where I go after anti-theistic arguments. Now first off, let me define anti-theism. For this task, I'm going to use two atheist sources just so I don't get accused of using biased sources. According to J.D. Brucker in Reason Over Faith, Anti-Theism in the Case Against Religion, anti-theism is the active protest to religious organizations of all different faiths. And in the second defining of anti-theism, this is done by the atheist's most trusted source for information, RationalWiki, which they define anti-theism as the belief that theism and religion are harmful to society and people, and that even if theistic beliefs were true, they would be undesirable. Now with that out of the way, I am going to go after an anti-theist argument. Anti-theists say that religion was a tool invented to control people. This is done as a way of showing the malevolent nature of religion. Here is George Carlin, aka a man atheists herald as their champion philosopher, even though he, funny enough, denied being an atheist. Here is his argument.
About 5,000 years ago, a bunch of religious and political hustlers got together to try to figure out how to control people, how to keep them in line. They knew people were basically stupid and would believe anything they were told, so they announced that God had given them some commandments.
Now, I being the generous man I am, I have gone through the trouble of putting this argument from anti-theist in didactic form, from which it will be made to look like this. Premise 1. Things that were invented to control people are bad. Premise 2. Religion is a thing that was invented to control people. Conclusion, therefore religion is bad. Now, with that out of the way, I think this is a stupid argument for the following reasons. 1. The first premise isn't true because one can simply ask, what does the negative origin of something have to do with its current benefits? Just because an idea has dark origins doesn't mean it can't be beneficial or be retooled into something good. For example, a lot of wedding traditions have dark origins. Bridesmaids were originally like bodyguards for brides, and the purpose of the best men was to prevent the bride from escaping, and a whole lot of more wedding traditions were simply ways to ward off spirits. Now, does the fact that there are wedding traditions with dark origins mean that wedding traditions in of themselves are bad? Obviously not, as the meaning behind these traditions have changed. So a religious person could grant that religion has its origins in control, but it doesn't mean that it applies anymore, and it has benefits that overrule that. This is an extension to the first one, although to a slightly different degree. Now, while RationalWiki's definition covers it, I will say it anyway because anti-theists overextend this argument into the validity of religion. If the argument becomes because religion was made this way as a way of controlling people, that therefore religion isn't true, that is to commit the genetic fallacy. It could be possible that because a religion is true, it had to control people, because not doing so would result in a bad outcome. 3. The anti-theist raising this likely isn't going to be consistent and apply this across the board. One can make the argument that schools and governments were invented for controlling people, but would anti-theists recommend that we dismiss governments and schools on the same ground as they do religion because of that? Clearly not. 4. The Hell Stipulation. The idea of hell is often used as evidence for control, but is fear of punishment always a bad thing? Isn't society guilty of this as well by having a prison system where you are threatened to be stripped of your rights if you don't obey a current law, which atheists typically agree is a subjective opinion of people? Are parents bad because they give rules with the intention of disciplining the child if not followed? Anti-theists also typically make the assumption that hell doesn't exist in order to add on the fact that it lies to children, but they don't back that claim up. If we made the assumption that hell exists, then it would be foolish not to warn people about it. Penn Jillette said it best.
How much do you have to hate somebody to not proselytize? How much do you have to hate somebody to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell them that? I mean, if I believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that a truck was coming at you and you didn't believe it, that truck was bearing down on you, there's a certain point where I tackle you. And this is more important than that.
5. It really just overgeneralizes. One can reasonably believe that some religions were created to control people, but all religions? That is a harder stretch. Jesus himself was a first-century Jewish rabbi who preached a message that was controversial to authorities at the time and died for it. He hardly seemed to be the type of guy trying to control people. Buddha was a prince who gave up materialistic desires to live a simple life and taught people as such. Hardly seems like the guy who was power-hungry. 6. The phrase which is taken as self-evident, aka religion was invented to control people, really just commits the bare assertion fallacy. Really there is no evidence given for the saying, and people who say it generally expect you to take it as true automatically without question. 7. Lastly, it presupposes an objective standard for morality without any justification. How can you honestly say it isn't morally wrong, it is or is not morally wrong for people to make things that control people? At best, you can say it is unpreferable to the society you currently live in, but you can't say in all earnestly that it is wrong. Well, that is all for today. This is Mr. Brass saying goodbye and get wise.